Hi everyone, welcome. Bonjour tout le monde, bienvenue. On va commencer dans quelques minutes.
We're going
Alors,
to start off in a few
si
minutes.
tu parles français,
So if you
tu
speak
peux
French,
accéder à
you can
l'interprétation
access
sur
interpretation
le bas de ton
on the
écran.
bottom of your screen.
Euh, Maintenant, moi, je peux aussi écouter
And
Oliver.
I can also
Uh,
hear all of you.
Avi, you cannot hear Oliver, can you?
Non, je peux pas.
All right,
Je,
I've got
n'écoute
some
pas
live
la
interpretation going this
traduction.
whole time for myself.
Oh, c'est difficile, Emma.
Let me make
That's
sure
so
that I
hard.
can get
C'est
out of the
impossible.
interpretation. And then we're going to get started. Avi, why don't you welcome everyone while I do a little tech
Welcome,
troubleshooting, and then we'll get
everybody. Emma was just welcoming everyone in French because we have live interpretation for this special climate conversation from the Lewis for Leader campaign. And then Emma was hearing the translation while speaking at the same time. So that was cool. So we're just working out a little bit of tech. C'est très important de parler français et d'avoir
It's very important to
événements
speak French.
bilingues. C'est
Have a bilingual
fondamental
event.
pour nos campagnes. But it's also, il y a des défis. There are challenges to having, trying to do bilingual events. And I know you all appreciate it and are extending a little grace for this. How you doing, Emma? You want to try?
I can still hear Oliver.
Okay.
But why don't we get started and we will figure it out definitely as you and Seth are in conversation with one another. So welcome everyone, bienvenue. We are so happy to have all of you with us tonight. There are over 400 people on the call tonight, which is just incredible. I see that folks are already doing this, but as you're joining, please drop in the chat, introduce yourself, and let us know where you're calling in from. We have been building a truly coast to coast to coast movement on this campaign, and it is so exciting to see people joining us from small communities, large communities, rural municipalities, and so welcome to all of you. So we're going to get started. So my name is Emma Jackson, as Avi said. I am the outreach director on the Lewis for Leader campaign. And I am a climate organizer. I'm based on Treaty 6 territory in Amiskwaciwâskahikan, also known as Edmonton, Alberta, which is the land of the Cree, Dene, Nakota Sioux, Saulteaux, and Métis people. And before we get started, I just want to go over a couple of different housekeeping items for this evening. So as I said at the top of the call, l'interprétation simultanée de l'anglais au français est disponible sur cet appel. Alors, Oliver will be speaking to the francophones on our call tonight and translating for English, from English into French. Closed captioning is also available. So you will see a sort of CC icon at the bottom of your screen, and you can access closed captioning through there. We are also recording tonight's call. I share that because for those of you who might be, falling asleep on the couch in Happy Valley Goose Bay, Labrador, if you have to, sign off and go to sleep at 10:30 at night, we forgive you and we'll send you the rest of the recording tomorrow in your inbox, so you can tune in then and you won't miss out. So tonight I am so honored to welcome you all to the campaign's first ever solidarity session. And this one in particular is on tackling the climate emergency. And solidarity sessions will be sort of near weekly conversations that will happen as part of this campaign and the movement that we're building. And they're an opportunity for us to really put Avi in conversation with a social movement leader, organizer, key constituent, to hear from them and their experiences, but also to really hear about the major challenges that they're facing, that the movement is facing, and an opportunity, I would say, for all of us to really hear directly from Avi about what an NDP under his leadership would do to tackle these challenges head on. So we really see this as, an open conversation, a way for us to be in dialogue and to learn from one another. The way we've translated this into French is dialogue solidaire. So, a solidarity dialogue to really kind of bring that to heart. And we're really excited to be kicking off this first one at this moment in particular. So tonight, as we all know, world leaders are continuing to meet in Belém for COP30 in Brazil. And we're also meeting tonight only a week following Mark Carney's major projects announcement that is being celebrated all across the country by oil and gas lobbyists in this moment. And so we're joined by Avi and Seth to really talk about the political moment that we are in, the problems that we're facing, and to hear Avi's plan of how the NDP can really step up and rise to the occasion in this moment to tackle the climate crisis. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our two sort of panelists for this evening. So as many of you know, Avi Lewis is a journalist, a UBC teacher, a proud dad, and a Telecaster fanatic. He is running to be the next leader of the federal NDP, and he's calling for a party that really refuses to tack right, that names capitalism as being at the root of the crises we're facing, including the climate crisis, and that really unites working people instead of chasing this mushy middle. Many of you will also know him, but our guest for this evening is none other than little brother-in-law Seth Klein. He would like you to know that he's in fact taller than Avi.
Barely.
Just happens to be younger. Seth is the author of A Good War, Mobilizing Canada for the Climate Emergency, and he writes a regular column for Canada's National Observer. He's an adjunct professor with Simon Fraser University's Urban Studies program, and he serves on the board of directors of the BC Policy Solutions. He is also a major contributor to Avi's platform. And so we're really lucky to be able to kind of get him out from behind the Google Docs that he's been working within and really come into this conversation with all of us to share more about the plan and the ways that an NDP under Avi's leadership will really rise to this occasion. So I'm going to leave it there, and I will be back shortly.
You'll come back and rescue us, right, Emma?
I will, I promise.
Okay, great. Seth, I'm going to just say something briefly in introduction and throw it to you to set the scene of our political moment. Sure. Our campaign has been laser focused on the cost of living emergency, on the everyday emergency of just trying to get by in an impossible economy. And tonight, for the first time, we are giving ourselves permission to talk about that other emergency, about the existential emergency. Going from the everyday to the one that is threaded through every part of life, our past and our future, and what kind of world we want to live in. Whether we want to live in a world that is based on a logic of extracting maximum profit and competing in a Darwinian rat race to get the most value out of natural resources, out of each other, out of the retail sector, out of every part of our lives, or whether we want to start working towards a world based on care and repair with indigenous communities in the wake of colonialism, care for each other, and care for our shared home. So this is a pivot tonight and a specific dive on the platform planks that we're going to be releasing around the climate emergency. And Seth, very delighted to share this space with you. You and I have been working together with many, many other people in our wide consultations in the climate community on these specifics. So why don't you start off by situating us in the grim reality where we start this conversation?
Sure. Hi. Well, first of all, let me just say hello to everybody and how happy I am to be doing this with you, Avi. And am I allowed to say happy birthday to Emma? It's Emma's birthday.
Happy birthday, Emma! People, put your birthday wishes for Emma in the chat. Imagine having to do the first of a series on your birthday. Wow.
Yeah, really. I'm so glad to be doing this with you, Avi, and sharing some of the good work that we've been doing together as we've been spending evenings and weekends working on your platform. And I think what people are really going to see is a platform that takes the best of what our climate movement has to offer and gives it political expression finally. But to delve right into what you said and the moment we find ourselves in, look, I think everyone on this call knows we're in trouble. Emma mentioned that world leaders are gathered in Brazil as we speak. Scientists are ringing the alarms. It's been another year of record temperatures. We're in this weird period of great dissonance between what the scientists and justice and the earth is telling us we need to do, and our current political leaders seem unwilling to entertain. Um, when I started doing this work, Avi, I think for a lot of people, the climate emergency was still a threat somewhere else, sometime in the future. But the last few years have altered that. We all know it's here and it's now. We all feel it with increasing frequency and ferocity. It's causing great destruction and bringing death on occasion to the people and places that we love. And for some inexplicable reason, Mark Carney is choosing this moment that cries out for leadership to retreat. You see it in the budget 2 weeks ago, where Carney has really made his choice clear. He's choosing fossil fuel production over climate action. Even though the oil and gas sector, to be clear, is the largest source of our emissions. In fact, as the world gathers in Brazil, it's important to point out that if you look at these 10 years since the Paris Agreement, the thing that is holding us back is continued oil and gas production. And just 4 countries, the United States, Australia, Norway, and us, we are responsible for a 40% increase in oil and gas emissions in production since Paris. We're the bad guys. We have been turned into this pariah. But back to the budget, and even leading up to the budget, we see the Carney government walking back commitments to zero emission mandates and the oil and gas emissions cap. He's dramatically cutting the budget for environment and climate change. And really, he uses this language in the budget about how he's all for driving investment, not prohibitions. It's a garbage line. If you look at the most significant, impactful climate policy we've had in Canada is when Ontario phased out coal-powered electricity. That was a prohibition. It works. It's singularly responsible for most of the progress we've made. In contrast, he keeps hoping for these private sector investments that aren't coming. Like, no one's coming to our rescue. We're going to have to do this ourselves. But instead, at the core of his budget, the Liberal climate plan remains almost entirely based on 2 key policies: industrial carbon pricing, which we have yet to really see. They acknowledge it's a mess and they need to fix it. And this package of tax credits trying to incentivize the private sector to step forward. And it's not going to work. We have 10 years of experience that it's not going to work. It's not going to achieve the speed and scale. In fact, the day after the budget, the Federal Environment Commissioner, Jerry DeMarco, tabled a report that the tax credits we've seen to date have failed to have take-up in the way that we've seen. And they're jettisoning the greenwashing rules, and
it's really been an extraordinary retreat. It's really been extraordinary. And really, and this is such a compelling time to have an NDP leadership race, and to see the opportunity opening up before us as a party to be the party of climate clarity. Like, Carney has capitulated at every stage, most of it clearly to appease Trump. And has wound us back. We were already kind of a pariah in the G7. Canada's the only, if you look at that terrifying graph, Canada's the only country that's still up here, whereas all the other countries in the G7 have reduced their emissions dramatically since the late 1990s. And now we have this extraordinary moment where Carney and Poilievre are both pushing for oil and gas expansion. There are minor differences between them. Like, Poilievre and Carney are like the Enbridge and Suncor of Canadian politics. One is still trying to greenwash oil and gas. The other one doesn't even bother. They're like, Poilievre wants to drill, baby, drill, and Carney is essentially shill, baby, shill. And this is a moment for the NDP to step up and say, no way. And as all of you know who have participated in the climate movement over the last years, as all of you know, we have big work in climate activism, and one part of it is the no, and the other part of it is the yes. And we focus equally on both because we can't just be fighting against things. We have proposals, we've developed them, we've piloted them, we've been getting better and better at addressing the real needs, everyday needs of people. And nowadays, climate solutions are all solutions that lower the cost of living for Canadians. And so the yes is giant and very well developed, and we'll be getting to that in the second half of this conversation. But we do have to start with the no. And the no is simply not trying to incentivize our way out of this, not trying to throw money at corporations, the very same corporations that are pouring gasoline on the fire of the climate emergency and hope that they will somehow solve the problem, but actually confront the source of the problem, which is the power of oil and gas corporations, the power that they have over our economy, the power that they have over the narrative, our political narrative, and the way that our political class understands the challenges before us. And their escalating production has erased all progress in all other sectors of the economy. And so we really have to be clear about what the problem is. We have to get off fossil fuels as quickly as possible. That's an existential urgency. It's an existential imperative. And here's the thing, and this is why I'm running to be leader of the NDP. We worry about oil and gas workers. There are not as many oil and gas workers as the political narratives suggest, and they kind of play an inflated role in our political imagination. But there are thousands and thousands and thousands, and we cannot make those workers pay the price. In fact, the NDP is the only party that you can trust to make sure that not one single worker pays the price for getting off oil and gas. It is big oil that has sucked hundreds of billions of dollars of profit out of the ground in this country, and it is big oil that has to pay the lion's share to get us out of the mess that their decades of mega profits have created for all of us. And the NDP has an opportunity now, with Carney moved so far to the right in general, not just in climate policy, that the Liberals are practically sitting on the laps of the Conservatives on the other side of the House. Now the path is clear for the NDP to be a party of climate clarity. And that has significant implications. And Seth, I want you to talk about it because here in BC, it's a complicated situation for NDPers when it comes to getting off fossil fuels here and everywhere else. But I want you to talk a little bit about LNG, because that's been so much of the focus of these new mega projects that have been approved recently and are being pushed by governments across the country.
Yeah. First of all, let me just say how refreshing it is to hear you talk that way. I mean, this is what's been missing in federal leadership, is people who are speaking with the kind of clarity that you just said. And to build on that, there's no question that for the elephant in the room, especially for us in British Columbia, is liquefied natural gas or LNG. And it is very discouraging to see whether it's LNG Canada Phase 2 or now the Silism's LNG making it onto Carney's major projects list. Notwithstanding his book, what this tells me is that this guy simply does not get climate. When you look, let's just take Silism's, the latest one. It's supposed to produce 12 million tons of LNG a year. When that gets burned, when we ship it off and what we call its downstream emissions, those downstream emissions from that one facility, Avi, are going to be roughly equivalent to 5% of Canada's total domestic emissions, or about half of British Columbia's total emissions. That's why those of us in the climate movement know and understand and call these facilities carbon bombs. If these projects proceed, they're a legacy with which none of us are going to want to be associated. But I know it's awkward for you. You're running for the NDP, so let me tell.
It is. I get asked
how do you wrestle with that?
I know. Well, I get asked about this all the time, and I have done a lot of soul searching. I've done a lot of talking to people in the BC NDP. I just came back from Victoria, where we had a wonderful BC NDP convention this past weekend. And when it comes to the question of LNG, I want to be really clear. I'm a British Columbian NDPer, And I am very grateful for our NDP government in this province. Premier John Rustad, people would be an absolute freaking nightmare. I have been proud of Dave Eby standing up to Danielle Smith over her fantasy of another bitumen pipeline to the north coast of BC. We already have this massive white elephant, this anchor, this boat anchor hanging off of our public conscience and our public purse, the $35 to $50 billion TMX expansion pipeline. No more. We don't need any more. And I was really proud to see this past week when Dave Eby reaffirmed the North Coast tanker ban with all of the First Nation leadership of the region. It is a fragile coalition. It's an important coalition, and the BC NDP government is helping hold it together, helping hold the line. But when it comes to LNG, so many of us are heartbroken, we are utterly mystified, and we are frankly enraged at the fact that our NDP government is going full bore on this fossil fuel. The Xela Sims project that Seth was talking about, re-announced by Carney this week, should not proceed, in my view. Absolutely not. It's US owned and operated. The backers of it are Trumpian billionaire bad guys. And like many BCers, I'm totally opposed to it. You know that companies and governments have for a long time peddled the PR spin that natural gas is a bridge to a clean energy future. The bridge is burning. It is no kind of bridge. Methane is the most potent greenhouse gas in the next 20 years when we must make this societal shift. It leaks at the fracking site. It leaks at the liquefaction site. It leaks when they're putting it on the tankers. We must choose a different path. This is no bridge to the future. And we can't just oppose conservative or liberal projects like this. We need to have the bravery to say to any government of any stripe that is building new pipelines and new fossil fuel infrastructure, this shall not pass. Now, here's the thing. We're allowed to disagree within the NDP family. I'm fighting for a federal NDP that will be utterly clear on climate. We must have a federal party that takes a science-based position that is rooted in justice, rooted in care, rooted in Indigenous rights. And that means getting off fossil fuels, protecting workers, and protecting our shared future. And at the same time, I support and appreciate and love the BC NDP government for everything that it's doing on housing, everything that we got $10 a day childcare in this province. We still need better paid childcare workers so that we can all enjoy $10 a day childcare, but BC is always the first on those expansions of the social safety net. We got free post-secondary tuition for youth in care. We're making the tax system more progressive in BC. And I feel more than one thing at once, like we all do. We can have conflicting feelings and positions together. The problem is the establishment media is waiting to pounce on any disagreement, to declare circular firing squad on the left, BC family, NDP family fight, etc. We're not going to let them do that. We are allowed to have respectful disagreements within the NDP family. It is a democratic party. If you're confused, it's right there in the name. So that's my take on how we navigate this moment. I think there are a lot of BCers out there who feel the same way. And I am hoping very much that we can bring back the federal NDP as a clear climate champion in this country and in the next election. So that's the no. I think we've explored that pretty forcefully. Let us turn to the yes. Let's turn to the yes, Seth. And you have a wonderful way of framing the moment that we're in, the opportunity, the excitement, the sort of generational moment that we could have if we had a government that was actually committed to doing the right thing. Set up the yes for us.
Yeah. Well, if things are going to get done, I think the takeaway is unlike the approach that we've seen for the last 10 years from the Liberals. If things are going to get done, we're going to need to do an awful lot of it ourselves. We're going to need a government that gets into the driver's seat and just does it. And we're going to need a Canadian Green New Deal. That's what you've been talking about for years.
Oh, yeah.
That creates millions of good jobs, helping to build the economy of the future. I mean, you've been so clear in this campaign talking about the fact that people are struggling with the everyday emergency of getting by. The key, if we're actually going to mobilize in the face of the climate emergency, is don't ask people to choose. We need to show climate leadership that's bold and brash, but we need to wed that to an audacious plan for tackling the affordability crisis, and that includes this robust and compelling and real just transition plan so that those who currently feel that their lives are and jobs are reliant on the fossil fuel economy can have comfort that no one's going to be left behind. Uh, uh, and instead of trying to incentivize our way in this fight of our lives, we're going to need to tackle the climate crisis at speed and scale, um, done in a way that's respecting Indigenous rights and sovereignty, and that creates all of those jobs, and that invites Canadians to join in some sort of a grand undertaking together.
That's it. That's it. Yeah, it really is. And it is the sense of mission in this moment. Our political moment right now is really characterized by this unexpected attack from the United States, the economic attack from Trump. It's been going on for quite a long time now. We had a whole election about it. And there's a sense that big things need to be done. It's a nation building moment. And so many of us have been waiting for this moment all our lives, and we have all of our proposals ready. We could live in a country where we reduce our energy bills, where we clean our air and water, where we revitalize downtowns and small cities and rural areas, where we take back control of our energy systems from foreign corporations, create all those good jobs, and we need a much more ambitious approach in order to do it. While we're hurtling backwards with all of the direction that the Carney government has given, especially when you think about a commitment to spend 5% of our GDP on defense and on the military. Look, I know there's a lot of dual use infrastructure in there. And I know that Canadian armed forces, families, they must have pay raises. They must have better housing. There is a need for defense. We're clear about that. But to go to 5% of our GDP when we've never been able to find 1% of GDP, which has long been the call for 30 years now, more than 30 years, for what would be required to actually, have a safe future in terms of climate policy, it's absolutely absurd. But now that we're talking about public spending on this level, then we certainly could be creating way more jobs, creating way more economic independence, and actually slashing our emissions while we reduce the cost of living for people, while we make transit and housing and work and every other part of our lives way better, more beautiful, more reliable, and more dignified. And the secret, in our opinion, on this campaign is public ownership, because we've seen the market fail again and again to do anything other than suck up all those incentives and just stash them in the bank account. We've seen it with auto companies. We've seen it on every level. Provinces that had a subsidy for heat pumps, which are this fantastically important technology in getting our buildings a huge source of emissions off oil and gas. You give a $5,000 heat pump subsidy, and suddenly heat pumps are $4,000 more expensive. I mean, this is not the way to work, or more. So we need public ownership. We need a green industrial strategy. Government can and must invest those billions of dollars and create all those hundreds of thousands of jobs to install the climate infrastructure that we need, from a clean electricity grid to rooftop and balcony solar, the battery storage systems. China has altered the economics of solar energy and of battery storage in just the last 18 to 24 months. We are now at the tipping point where these technologies are cheaper and cheaper. As Bill McKibben says, the cheapest way to produce energy on planet Earth today is to point a piece of glass at the sun. And now the price of storing that energy has never been lower and is getting lower every month. And so that's where we really need to go. I was in this New Flyer bus plant in Winnipeg, Seth, as part of the tour, and it was thrilling to see Canadian steel come in one end of the plant, be made into bus parts, to be assembled on the other side of the plant into EV buses, completely Canadian made with Canadian materials. And they were going to, cities and municipalities across the country. They got $13.5 billion worth of orders waiting, and a multi-year wait for these EV buses. We need them everywhere. We could reconnect our country and our communities and abolish the stress and nightmare of trying to get to work on broken public transit with an electric bus revolution. And it would be the biggest economic boost that we could possibly have, way better than all of these schemes to incentivize corporations to take more of our public money and not deliver the jobs and independence we need. So there's a little bit of, I know I just saw Emma flash on, so I feel like we're, as we do, Seth, maybe running out the
We
clock
talk too long?
with our excitement. But Emma, you want back in this convo, and we are happy to have you here.
I do. Thanks, guys. So we have almost 600 people on the call right
Holy
now, which is
moly.
just,
Really?
yeah, absolutely incredible. And one of the things, I mean, I wanted to jump in at this point because for me, one of the key things that is so exciting about this campaign is finally having the conversation and having a candidate who is saying we absolutely need public ownership, who isn't shying away from the role of the government to tackle these crises head on. And not just, on climate change. And we're not just talking about one or two kind of small crown corporations here or there, but us really wielding our political power, the power of the state, to actually address the crises that we're facing in a way that actually works for working people. And that has been absent. It's been, so much of what I think we need, the conversation that we need to have in this country. But ultimately, for us to not only have that conversation, but actually make it happen, we need Avi to become the next leader of the federal NDP. That is the reality. It's not just about the conversation. It's about implementing these changes, about getting into government and making it happen. So here's the thing. Only members of the federal NDP are able to vote for the next leader of the NDP. And you must become a member by January 28th. So right now, I have Hannah, and Hannah's going to launch a poll to see how many of you are already members of the NDP. And soon we will look at this. And it's been really, really exciting. I will just share that as the sort of RSVPs, nearly 1,000 RSVPs to this call have come in, so many of those RSVPs have actually come from people who we haven't yet engaged on this campaign, which is absolutely incredible. It's very clear that people are hungry for real conversations like this, where we get to actually dig into the problems we're facing and really hear, from one another about the big ideas and how it is that we're going to tackle them. So if you're already a member of the NDP, that's great. But for those of you who aren't, we are asking you to sign up now. We have 72 days. We have, a ticker on our website at the very top of our website. Fuels a lot of anxiety for me
That
these
countdown
days.
is in my
Every day I wake up.
Yes.
And we're working to sign up thousands of members by January 28th. And here's the thing, as a serial procrastinator who would often wait until, the second, third week of January, the final hour to actually get this done, I think there are a ton of organizers on this call who can appreciate the necessity of really directing our resources and capacity and wanting to spend as much time as humanly possible for us to reach really beyond the choir and invite new people in. So the more that folks on this call become members, start reaching out to their own networks, that enables us, it frees up our time and our capacity to be going to, small corners and other communities and really bringing them in. So please do not, fellow procrastinators, wait on this. We want you to register now. It really is so important and so helpful for us. So why don't we launch the poll results to this if we can? And I know that folks have been dropping this link in the chat. So please go to that link today if you are not already a member and are considering becoming one. There are many people here who are either still making up their mind or who have said, yes, I'm a fellow procrastinator, but I will go do it now. So please go do that. All right, I will leave it back to both of you to talk through kind of many of these key policies, right? That not only the two of you, I would say, have been working on and championing and talking about, but I just want to recognize that so many of the people actually on this call are people who have created the policies that this platform, that this campaign is really drawing on. There are people here who have spent, decades, the past decade, door knocking, talking to their neighbors about the importance of an excess profits tax, talking to their community members about a universal heat pump program. And so just really want to lift that up and hear from both of you about those policies and what you've been inspired by.
Thank you, Emma. God, it's so great to do a call with Emma Jackson. And
Mm-hmm.
also, Janelle, I saw you wishing Emma happy birthday. That made my heart sing. Thank you for dropping in. Seth, this is a great invitation actually, because you've been developing a lot of the policy framework in conjunction with many other people on the campaign. Talk a little bit about the process as we get into the specifics of what's actually in the platform. Just set it up, please, with a little bit of what you've done and the breadth of consultation and movement engagement on the platform pieces.
Yeah, there's been a ton of volunteers, part of your policy development team, and we've just been fanning out for the last few months, really reaching out to movement partners and telling and asking them, what have you been longing in your heart to see?
Yeah.
And what are the ideas that are most captivating to you? And we've been assembling those into planks of your platform, which
It's almost six. I look back, it's almost 6 months
yeah,
since I first
it's been a long
harassed you
time.
about doing this.
So we're on the cusp of releasing it kind of bit by bit, plank by plank between now and the end of January. And so the climate piece is going to be out shortly, but tonight we're going to be giving you a little preview of what's in there. Before the break there with Emma, we kind of gave you the broad picture of what's messed up and what we need to change. But now we're going to delve into some specifics. You want me to start off with the just
Yeah.
transition piece? Oh, there it
Yes.
is.
I just want to say that just transition is still for me, it's an awkward term. I have never found a better one. I've struggled with this for a while.
Yeah.
For too many workers, especially workers in the resource sector, in forestry and mining and in oil and gas, when we make the transition at last, transition is the last word that a worker hears before they get screwed.
Right.
There's never enough money. There's never enough training. There's never real income replacement. And that's why when just transition can be a triggering phrase for a lot of workers and a lot of unionized workers. But when we talk about it, we are talking about a level of investment that will actually take care of workers, make them whole, and birth entire new industries before anyone is asked to give anything up, so that we do it at the same time, so that we're not actually asking people to sacrifice when they weren't the ones that caused the problem in the first place.
Exactly.
So go ahead, take it, Seth.
Well, let me just concur with what you're saying. I mean, I think for years, I also wrestle with the language because it has been weighted down by being this hollow, false promise. And I think as a movement and with the governments that we've had, part of what has held us back on winning truly ambitious climate policies is that we have failed to make a compelling counteroffer to all of those people who rightly feel anxious about what this is going to mean, whether they're communities or as workers, they feel too tied and reliant on this sector. And so your platform offers that compelling and robust just transition and sustainable jobs plan. And key planks include, and this one, of course, is dear to my heart, but a youth climate core.
Yes.
So we got a bit of a win in the budget two weeks ago, where the Carney government announced that they would start standing up a youth climate core with 20 million a year for 2 years, which if you were paying the living wage, basically would let you train and hire 350 people a year, which is basically how many would fit into my son's elementary school. We have been calling instead for funding of $1 billion a year for starters. That'd be enough to train and employ 20,000 young people a year. And with the idea that that would grow over time to meet demand. Because ultimately, we want a program where anyone under 35 who says, I get the emergency, I'm ready to sign up and rally in our collective defense, whether it's responding to extreme weather events like fires or floods, or building up ecological resilience to these events, or most importantly, driving down our emissions with building retrofits and renewable energy installations. Anyone who wants to do that for 2 years, getting trained up and paid a living wage, nobody would be turned away. So you have that commitment in your platform.
Absolutely.
It would represent a much larger commitment than what has been offered. And it is long past time you know, Avi, like you know, you're a prof. I like giving talks to post-secondary audiences. For years, I encountered these young audiences of young people who get the emergency. They want to enlist in this fight of our lives, and they're like, "Where is my goddamn invitation?"
Yeah,
And so that's what this is.
beautiful.
A second piece is a climate emergency sustainable jobs transfer. We need an audacious new federal transfer that would represent roughly a 1% of GDP, but where the transfers from the feds to the provinces and territories and indigenous communities is specifically linked to funding climate infrastructure projects. You talked off the top there about what a hollow promise just transition has been. It's because the investment money isn't there for the projects.
Yeah,
Or they're just trying to offer a 15 or 30% tax credit to some private sector operator, hoping that they'll step up. So here we have the money for the projects that would create thousands of jobs, along with training and apprenticeship for those jobs. I really believe that a transfer program like this would be just a mechanism to renew confederation while rising to this crisis.
mm,
Um, but by focusing the transfer dollars on the provinces, here's the twist. Unlike health transfers or education transfers, we would actually concentrate a disproportionate share of the transfers to those provinces that have more heavy lifting to do with
yeah.
respect to the energy transition. So we're signaling to people in those provinces.
To Saskatchewan, to Alberta, to
Yeah,
Newfoundland, to northern BC, those areas that are most dependent on fossil fuels will and must get the support. And we need a mechanism on this scale, Seth. I mean, you and I have gotten into the nerdy policy, the dry policy details, but like they've been trying to do it with rounding errors, with tax credits off the side of every department's desk. And we are talking about a major new climate transfer. And we think about health transfers, we think about education transfers, we're actually talking about doing it for real. And that includes also a planning authority. Because if we're talking about a green industrial strategy, we actually need a federal mechanism to identify what workers are needed, where are the jobs going to be, what industries need to emerge. When we talk about public ownership, we're talking about manufacturing, we're talking about energy, we're talking about heat pumps and solar panels for all in this platform. And so we're talking about creating new industries in Canada using Canadian materials and hiring unionized Canadian workers. And we need to identify and coordinate and plan. The lost art of government planning for something on this scale has to be recovered. And so a transition planning authority to actually make sure that there are enough trained workers and there will be a fountain of good new jobs when we actually start talking about putting a heat pump, this incredible technology that works both as air conditioning and as heating. Places like here in British Columbia, we never needed air conditioning before. Now people who have heat pumps have both. Because in the summer and the heat domes, and when people actually die from heat stroke and from heat-related health emergencies, we actually do need cooling in many parts of the country where we didn't. And this is a low-tech solution. It gets buildings off fossil fuels, it makes people more comfortable, and we should be providing it to every home, apartment, condo, house, and dwelling in Canada under public ownership for as little and as often as possible, making it free. If you look at PEI right now, under a conservative government in Prince Edward Island, they're giving free heat pumps for any household that has a household income less than $100,000. We can absolutely do this and more across the country with the policies that we're talking about tonight. And providing solar panels for every roof and balcony in Canada with battery storage, which, as I mentioned before, is coming down. Just ran into a couple of people at the NDP convention who were boasting about they've got 27 solar panels on their roof, and every year they get $400 back because they're actually making money on their solar panels and they're paying for themselves over time. And I was like, oh, that sounds like you live in a sunny place. They're like, we're here in Victoria, where it's cloudy a lot of the time when it's not raining. So there you have it. There's a green homes plan in our platform, Seth, we're good. There, you can tell from the slides, they're encouraging us to move faster.
Right. Okay. So
Give us the Coles
so,
notes here,
I
brother.
mean, you've already given us a taste. So, people talk about a chicken in every pot. Now we're going to have a heat pump and storage battery for every home. When it comes to new homes, we just need to set a clear rule that new homes can't tie into gas lines. They can use electric heat pumps like this. But there's also this huge challenge around what do we do with existing homes. Uh, Carney just killed the Green Homes Loan Program and the Greener Homes Affordability Program. We're going to lean back into those. Our friend Brendan Haley and folks at Efficiency Canada have pointed out we need to embrace energy efficiency and conversion to these new technologies as a nation building investment.
You're damn right it is.
I mean, this is the thing. They're talking about pipelines and LNG. These things take years. I mean, by the time they came. Donald Trump hopefully won't be president. Hopefully he'll be residing in the fiery pits of hell by the time these are done. Whereas focusing on building retrofits is this fantastic approach because you're tackling energy poverty for lower income households immediately.
Create the jobs immediately.
It's quickly deployable. It's regionally fair. It's cost effective. It's tariff proof. It lowers emissions. And
it creates jobs in communities where the work gets done. And it creates jobs immediately in the first year, not way down the line.
Exactly. Let's go on to the next one.
We're talking about free and fast public transit. We got to make public transit free. It's such an incredible driver for the economy when people can actually get to freaking work and they're not completely depleted, stressed out, and demoralized when they get there. And one of the big problems right now is that Ottawa has always, almost always, and certainly for decades now, been too drawn to the shiny ribbon-cutting capital projects, new subways, new infrastructure, and the operation of transit systems, especially since the pandemic, has been forced more and more to be funded by fares. Fares are going up, transit's getting shittier, people are less motivated to pay the higher fares. We got to get off this, we got to get completely off this treadmill, and the federal government has to step up and fund its fair share of the operating costs of transit to make transit buses and trains run reliably and on time, and we can make transit free for people across the country. And that includes subsidizing bike shares and car shares, electric car shares, and e-bike systems to help people get their transportation costs under control. Owning a car is extremely expensive. Whole new generation of people coming up these days, young folks, do not want to own a car. We need functioning transportation. And even in rural communities, there are van shares, there are last mile solutions where you can get e-cargo bikes that could have public charging infrastructure that can get people all the way to where they need to go. And it doesn't have to break the bank when the federal government does these things under public ownership. And we obviously need power lines, not pipelines. We're talking about east-west bitumen pipeline or connecting different parts of our country for fossil fuels. What are we doing? We have all of these provincial grids that are set up north-south to trade electricity with the United States. A 21st century grid is a nation-building project like nothing else, where we actually bring in 21st century technology, an efficient 21st century grid that could have net metering for renewable energy all the way across and battery storage that would allow provinces with existing big hydroelectricity resources like BC, like Quebec, and others to trade interprovincially. Manitoba could trade hydro with Saskatchewan instead of doing it with the northern states. This will create tens of thousands of jobs, unionized electricians. We can use the Canadian steel that we can't sell to the United States for tariffs, and we can become energy self-sufficient while we slash emissions and get off fossil fuels. Power lines, not pipelines, is just an obvious nation-building project in this time, and would cost a fraction of what the Carney government wants to spend on defense, with plenty of investment possible for other things. And that's just the beginning. We have a problem with our information ecosystem as well, Seth. And this is something that you wrote about in your book, The Good War, and you've been really clear on this. So tell the truth about telling the truth.
Yeah, telling the truth. That's what real leaders do. I think that's what people are getting a taste of tonight of. Because when you're in a crisis, you got to honor people with the truth. and have leaders that are forthright about the severity of the threat, but still managing to impart hope. That's what I think people are hearing from you. And leaders who are ready and willing to bring on the fight with the corporations, these oil and gas corporations that wish ill for our children and grandchildren and nieces and nephews. And, while they claim to represent workers, the truth is they don't give a rat's ass about workers that they employ. They're already shedding them, even as they increase production. And they are quite content to consign those workers to the scrap heap of history, just like past industrial revolutions. We have to clearly say, not this time. This time we're going to have your back. But in terms of telling the truth, one key plank of that is a ban on fossil fuel advertising. Former MP Charlie Angus, this is an idea that comes from our friends at CAPE, the Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment, who've been campaigning on this. Just like with cigarettes, if something is clearly bad for our health, it just muddies the public sphere to have these companies continuing to advertise. And interestingly, when Charlie brought forward a private member's bill in the last parliament to ban fossil fuel advertising, the industry went nuts on him.
Oh yeah, they freaked out. You could tell how much it meant to them.
I mean, he was getting death threats.
Yeah.
But that's the test right there of when you see the reaction from the fossil fuel companies, you have a policy that matters. And this is a policy that matters.
Maybe we should call it Charlie's ad ban, just, as like a little tip of the hat to Charlie for that private member's bill.
So you would bring that back. Now
Absolutely.
That's about ending the misinformation and the confusing information. But on the flip side, we have another challenge, which is part of what's been holding us back, Avi, is that even though most Canadians are increasingly worried about climate and they want governments to do more, the basic level of public understanding is not good.
Yeah.
Only about half of Canadians correctly understand that the main source of global heating is the burning of fossil fuels. It's an incredible indictment on the lack of political leadership and the media not doing their job. And so we need a climate emergency information agency to lead and coordinate an ambitious program of public education and engagement and advertising to explain to Canadians what causes this and what we can all do.
Amazing. I know that we've been talking also in the platform about a new public agency, a climate emergency information agency. We've been talking about Sue Big Oil, which is a campaign that I was very honored to help launch a few years ago, municipalities suing the oil majors for climate damages because the smallest communities have the biggest costs. All of these things are going to show up in the platform. And there will also be an international dimension. There's a concept called fair shares. If you look at the carbon in the atmosphere, the amount of atmospheric space that rich countries have taken up with their emissions historically, all of those countries in the global south and smaller countries and island states and countries all over the world that are not as industrialized, they're entitled to a lot of atmospheric space, which is no longer available. So if we were actually paying our fair share, and I think Canadians believe in fairness and believe in cleaning up your own mess and believe in sharing things equally, we would have to reduce our emissions to zero and we still wouldn't have done our fair share globally. And that means that this now intersects with foreign policy and with our role internationally, where Canada actually is a rich country that can afford to pay climate reparations in a way that would boost renewable energy projects in the global south, transfer the technology that we develop here in Canada without making countries pay through the nose for it, and actually pay our climate debts and start talking about that and have an honest conversation with Canadians about it for the first time in our history. And I'm excited to embrace that challenge.
Yeah, it's really about taking the same principles of just transition that we're talking about within Canada and applying it on the global stage. And we should let people know that another international piece of what's in your platform is to have Canada become a signatory to the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty, which I know lots of people on this call have also worked on that issue.
Beautiful. Emma, we're running out of time. What's the emergency fire to put out now?
The secret is that I've actually been behind the scenes, behind the slides, skipping you guys along, but you've been doing great in picking up on those cues, so I appreciate it. Thank you, Seth, so much for joining us and for talking us through and for all of your brilliance and hard work, I think, behind the scenes working on this. I'm really excited for this platform to really be released and come to life. And yeah, just appreciate all of your work on that. So before we close things out, this is the first solidarity session, like I said at the top of the call. And I really would love to hear from you, Avi, about the relationship that you see and that you sort of envision existing between social movements and the NDP. I think for myself, the orientation behind these calls is really to appreciate that social movements are really a driving force of social change, that they are the ones that propel our political parties and that propel social change to actually happen. And I think for too long, that relationship has been really fraught. And so would love to hear from you about how you see this.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that's come up for me. I've spent most of the last 3 decades doing storytelling work, video and film and television, kind of love letters to social movements in Canada and around the world, very much engaged with different social struggles. And I see it as a key place of innovation and inspiration and creativity. And if you just look at the policies we've been talking about tonight, the Youth Climate Corps, the Sue Big Oil campaign, so many heat pumps for all, these are all demands that have been put forward by social movements and advocacy organizations that also that develop exciting and inspiring ideas, build people power on the ground, but are not built to implement policy. And that final piece is the role of political parties and people who are interested in electoral politics. We need a more respectful and a more sophisticated relationship between the outside and the inside. I think the NDP is a party. It's a little confusing because NDPers like to talk about our movement. And we do have an electoral movement. And when my grandpa was involved in the early days of the CCF in the 1930s and 40s, he called it an all-in people's movement. This is the party that came from farmers and workers' movements coming together to decide to have a political expression. But the relationship between the NDP and movements, I think there's some repair to be done, quite frankly. And that's why in our platform process, in climate and many other issues, we are listening to social movement actors. We are gathering the best and most powerful, inspiring demands and ideas and specific policies. We are collecting them. We're fighting for them within this leadership campaign. And we are not demanding that everybody just come into the NDP, or the leader runs to the front of the parade, or the NDP is the whole tent. No, we have a party, we have social movements, we have trade unions that need to be as militant as the rest of us. We're in a common front against the rising far right. And if people feel inspired to get involved in a leadership race, to get involved in a political party, great. But the NDP will always be the party that is responsive to social movements. And I don't think we can just be asking people relentlessly to give us stuff without actually reflecting back all the incredible work that social movements do and lifting it up. And that's what we're doing in this campaign. And we'll continue to do it throughout.
Yeah, I have appreciated that, I think, clarity so much from this campaign to actually recognize the party is the party and the movements are the movements. And just for myself, I, other than, knocking on doors for Blake Desjardins and running one friend for an NDP sort of nomination race, my own experience in electoralism, in electoral politics has been incredibly limited. Yeah. I have been a climate organizer for over a decade and really have seen my role to be deeply embedded and working within social movements, both for climate justice and more recently for Palestinian liberation. And a few weeks ago, I decided to step into this role and to work on this campaign full time. And there's a few key reasons for that I think, I want to share with others that are joining us on this call, because I think they maybe see things from similar positions. I think for myself, over the past few years, I have seen such a dramatic rightward shift in our political landscape that has set the conditions for our social movements in incredibly difficult ways. Being here in Alberta and seeing the rise of the far right, it is abundantly clear that we need a left electoral anchor in this country to prevent that, massive slide to the right in our political landscape. And I think that is so critical. I also think that as social movements, we actually need to learn how to flex our political muscle and actually contest for the everyday institutions that we have at our disposal. I think one thing I've heard you say, Avi, that to me puts this so well is, there are nearly 350 ridings all across the country. That infrastructure, what that means to power building in this country, if we actually engage with EDAs, if we have these sites of community. I've been working as part of the Palestine Solidarity Network for many years now that have riding level teams all across the country. And I've seen firsthand what happens when we use the infrastructure at our disposal. And it's incredibly powerful. Finally, and this is something I've said, I believe in your vision because it's not just your vision, it's our vision. It is the vision of so many of the people on this call who have been fighting tirelessly to put those policies out to the forefront of our political landscape, to engage in sit-ins at their MP offices, to be knocking on their neighbors' doors. All of that work that we have collectively done, I see this as a moment to actually not just believe in you, but to believe in ourselves and the work that we have done.
Oh my God, yes.
And I think that to me is so crucial. We're going over time, so I need to get to the big, calls to action of this call.
Do the big call to action, Emma. Emma, when you agreed to come on this campaign, it was one of the happiest days of my political life. You're a legendary organizer. You're so committed and have been for so long. That riding level work in Palestinian solidarity was one of the most important developments, I think, in the intersection of Canadian social movements and politics in a very long time. And I know you worked with thousands and thousands of other people tirelessly on that. And this is where we can do something really new. So I just wanted to take a moment and say, beyond happy birthday. Thank you so much for doing this. Will you take us out with a big call to action?
Yes.
The big barnstorm energy that you're so good at?
So once again, we have from now until January 28th to recruit thousands of members all across the country, and we can't do that without all of you. So I'm going to have folks drop in the chat. If you haven't yet become a member, please consider doing so on this call right now before you go to bed. And then finally, there are so many organizers that are on this call, people who I know are part of local groups and organizations who are well connected to their community. We need you to go to lewisforleader.ca/organize. For all of you that are incredibly competitive out there, we're going to launch a Zoom poll, and I want to know how many people you can sign up to become a member of the NDP. And one great thing about this is you will get your own personal referral links. This is probably my personal favorite part of the campaign, which means that you're able to track every individual who you personally have signed up to become a member of the party. You get your own emails that tell you, Kate signed up, Caitlin signed up, Christian signed up, whoever it is. And you get to see your name kind of rise on this leader dashboard that we have. So it is really incredible. If you can only start with one person, that's incredible. That's great. If every single person on this call, all 550 of you, sign up one member, that's an incredible feat. And so however many members you can sign up are very, very welcome. And please do that. New volunteer events are added to our calendar. If you are able to volunteer for the campaign, there are a number of ways to do that, whether it's joining phone banking, text banking, sort of national volunteer shifts. You might decide that you're ready to host an action in your community in person. So getting together with your friends to phone bank, or it might be that you're ready to launch a local chapter or join a local chapter. We have, over a dozen chapters now all across the country of people who are throwing down in their community for this campaign. And
Emma, don't forget, because people, not everybody wants to do digital organizing. It's a national campaign, so there's a lot of that. But people have been main streeting. People have been going to grocery stores with a public option for groceries, petitions. People have even been knocking on doors in this campaign. So there's lots of different real life ways to get involved, not only screens, right?
Yeah, and finally, we're going to launch one more poll after we close this one. I think Hannah's going to bring it up. We also need people to donate. You know, political campaigns are incredibly expensive. The more money we raise, I know from just the local level in Edmonton, they're trying to print 1,000 flyers. They want to go out in front of grocery stores, to the university campuses. They want to fan out across ridings in this city to tell people about this campaign. The more money we have flowing into our bank account, the less we need to worry, and the more flyers, buttons, you know, materials that we're able to print. And so that is another way to really contribute to this campaign, and we deeply appreciate that, and it helps us to keep growing this movement. So with that, I think we're going to close things out. I just want to remind folks, there is a debate next Thursday, November 27th, that is coming up. Avi will be in Montréal pour parler en français avec les francophones.
Oui, le débat.
Avec, you know, all of us all across the country, and we're so excited for that. So please tune in to watch parties and tune into that debate. All right. Thank you so much, everyone.
Take care, everyone.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks so much for coming, Seth. Last happy birthday, Emma. Thanks for everyone for coming, and we're going to do this again.
Perfect. Thank
on
you.
an almost weekly basis.